Hi, I'm Kelsey Zeiser. We're here in Austin, Texas at the Big 5G event in person. And I'm here with Mike Dano.
You may touch me. It's
Thanks.
okay. You can do that.
And Ian Morse. I'm going to touch you too.
Oh, me too.
We're just so glad to see
We
each other.
really are. It's true.
So nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big news so far is what happened in your freak scooter accident, right, Mike?
It's either a knife fight or either a mountain biking accident or a knife fight or something, whatever I'm feeling like using as an explanation.
Yeah.
Could be anything.
Yeah. So along those lines, what did you feel like were some of the big takeaways?
About Open Ran.
We're excellent at transitions.
Yes. Very subtle segue to, I don't know, I mean...
yeah, you had a discussion with Dish this morning,
I did have a discussion with Dish. Yeah, there's a lot going on at this show. I mean, there's so many, like, what is the big takeaway? Like, there's all kinds of stuff. There's talk about the cloud. There's talk about Open RAN. There's talk about, I think, something
Private
about 5G,
networks.
private networks. Like, you can just pick and choose from all different kinds of big topics, I think, that we're discussing.
What did he say when you started? Because I missed the first sort of 10 minutes. And I came in when he was talking about you were asking him about AWS and are they going to be faithful to AWS or is there an option to use?
Polygamous, I think, is what they're going to be about different clouds. Yeah, they're going to use all different kinds of clouds. They're not stuck on AWS. They're definitely sticking with Open RAN. They're going to meet their build-out targets. At one point, I think it was actually before the session, we talked a little bit about voice and how they're taking a very hands-off approach to voice. So they're going to work on having voice calls on the 5G network, obviously. But he was talking about how really they don't care much about voice. They just want, if the enterprise customer wants a particular voice protocol, like on Microsoft Teams or Ericsson with Vonage, or you know what I mean? They want to do all different kinds of voice protocols. They don't necessarily just want to do voice over NR, which I've been calling Boner to be. Because it's voice over NR, VONR.
Yeah.
But I think it's pronounced Boner.
I thought it was Bonaire.
Oh yeah, that must be it. It can't possibly be Boner.
No. I think it's Bonaire.
Yeah, probably.
So he's in charge of he's not CTO, is he?
No, he's a longtime Dish guy. He's been at that company for years and years, sort of before their big push. And so he was one of the ones who helped implement their spectrum purchasing strategy, and he's been sort of working on behind the scenes at Dish for a long time.
Yeah.
So he's a very hardcore Dish.
And has it sort of slipped a bit? I mean, he was saying they're going to meet targets and everything, but the perception I always have when I read your stuff and what other people are doing is that they always seem to be slipping in terms of what they originally set out to do.
Yeah, they got issues, I think that's true, yeah.
And that's just stitching together so many different vendors. And
I was talking to somebody, basically they're not doing one thing that's new, they picked all new things to do, all at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, cloud native, Open RAN, 5G, the voice over 5G, all of the things that they're doing are all completely new in the industry, and they're all trying to do them at the same time and also integrate them. So, the progress that they've made so far is kind of impressive. And they're not even a wireless networking company; they're a satellite TV company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they say they're going to make their build out, government mandated build out targets.
Okay.
We're still kind of watching to see if that actually happens, but everybody says it's gonna.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, from my standpoint, Dish is the most interesting story. At the show.
Yeah. And we also heard from Neville Ray with T-Mobile this morning, and I know, Mike, not to put it back on you again, but you had some thoughts on his announcements around, their kind of coverage areas. What stood out to you there?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about T-Mobile, and you listen to this too.
I did. I've already written something on it, so you're probably going to say something now, and I'm going to go, oh no, I never thought about that, because I just don't know.
I'm sorry, Ian, I should have started with you.
No, I want to hear what Mike says first, so that I can change my stuff.
I'm excited about, so they're building out their network, and they've got these huge coverage targets, and they're meeting that this year. So sure. When they are, hey, how's it going? Ooh, everybody's touching each other. It's fun. The coverage target. So right now, this year, they're working on expanding the actual geographic coverage of the network. which like requires a huge amount of towers. And so it's like the actual population coverage is not that big, but like the geographic coverage is huge.
Yeah, it's going up from something like 220 to 250 or 260 on the mid-band side. And,
which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but
then it's like 3 times the geographical coverage,
which is a lot of geographic.
And then, when I wrote my thing up, I sort of went through some of the earnings stuff about how much they're spending, and it's quite a bit more this year. I think this is like peak spend year for T-Mobile, they're saying, and then next year it starts to ease off a bit there. But I didn't realise they were quite as far ahead as they are on 5G build out. I mean, because we have in the UK, we have sort of BT going, yay, we're at 50% now, and it's a relatively small country compared to the US, and then you hear Neville Ray sort of going on about, we've already got 315 million covered on all the bands, and if you include the low band stuff as well, it is kind of impressive. But the other thing I went to do is look at the number of sites they have. I mean, this is something Deloitte was doing, I remember a couple of years ago, looking at site density and how many sites you have per 10,000 people seems to be the metric they use. And that's one area where the US still doesn't do as well as countries like, Europe doesn't either, but countries like China or South Korea. I think South Korea has something like 50 mobile sites per 10,000 people. And here it's,
wow.
I worked it out, it's 3 for T-Mobile specifically.
Wow.
So
interesting. So not nearly as dense as South Korea.
Not nearly as dense, and this is the thing that you talk to people like Ericsson about this. I mean, it's obviously in their interest to say, oh, you need denser networks because they can sell more equipment. But they might have a valid point when they say if if there are coverage gaps in the network at the edge, you might get sort of weak signals, and then there are certain types of service that are coming to do with XR or VR where maybe that dense network coverage is a big advantage for some of these countries. And that's when that's when they might have to start thinking about putting new sites, and the people don't really want to do that, put new sites in. They haven't densified in South Korea. I mean, I looked into this, and the weird thing is they just have this incredibly dense network. And I asked Gabriel Brown about it, who's one of our analysts at Heavy Reading, and he was like, I'm not sure why it's so dense, but it's been like that since the days of 4G. They just have this really
they
sort
saw
of dense,
Field of Dreams and really
grid.
ran with the if you
build all these tower sites,
just keep building
one after the other.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's like a major, because they talk about, especially building a tower in a rural area, it's got to be huge.
Yeah.
And it has to be, it's like $500,000 in some cases to get the site and get the permits to do it and build this big giant tower, build all of steel. It's expensive.
It's a big country. It's like South Korea is maybe not a fair comparison because it's quite densely populated and it's geographically relatively small. But the Chinese just seem to have gazillions of base stations, and more get added every year. And you think, I mean, this ratio, for them, it's something like 17 or 18. So it's pretty high compared with, I think with the UK's, we're almost like you. It's like 3 per. Which is kind of bad in a market of that size geographically.
Or do you really want all those cell towers everywhere?
Well, that's the other thing. Do we need it really?
Yeah, do you need it, and do you want it? I know that especially in the U.S., it can be very challenging to build a new tower in a city because you just can't get a permit for it.
Yeah.
Because no one wants a big giant cell tower in their backyard.
Yeah.
That's a big implement that everybody has talked about in the U.S. is just actually getting the permits to build any new sites anywhere, especially in downtown areas.
And I remember he was sort of saying that obviously the pace of 5G rollout now, and also because it's kind of galvanized AT&T and Verizon to go and spend loads of money on C-band, it's like a sort of vindicated their merger of because that was the big argument, wasn't it, to regulators, that if you allow us to do this, then we can roll out 5G more quickly. So that's sort of, I found that interesting because you kind of look at the various promises they made. Oh, we'll do this and we'll create jobs from day one. Not quite sure about that one. If you look at the
you've looked at their job.
I look at job figures quite a lot, and they didn't sort of lay anybody off last year, but it's gone down from, I think the year that the deal was announced, they had 81,000 employees across the two companies, and it's now 75,000. So 6,000 is quite a big.
I feel like that's less. Not more. Not the same either.
That's definitely less.
I think so. My math tells me. Yeah, exactly. Pierre's like, I think that's 2 different numbers, I think.
Apples and oranges.
I did. I mean, just going back to, Dish. I think the interesting thing for me is Rakuten haven't been on stage today or anything, but they're the company that they get compared to quite a lot, obviously, because they've done similar things in Japan, and did meet with their chief marketing officer yesterday, Jeff. it's interesting contrasting those two experiences. And I mean, to me, one of the things that's very different is Rakuten obviously comes from this kind of internet background, and they've taken responsibility for a lot of the technology themselves. You know, they've bought companies like InnoEye and what's the one recently, Robin.io, Altiostar. Yeah. They kind of own the tech, and I'm sort of wondering whether some of Dish's issues with trying to get this all to work together is because they're taking it from third parties, whereas what Rakuten's doing, I mean, they say it's Open RAN, and you know, but it's stuff they own. It's kind of in-house technology, a lot of it. You know, they own.
They can make it work because they already own it. They
exactly.
Don't have to get
that's really good point.
And I mean, this gets to the where you're going to run it. You know, putting it in a cloud and everything. But I was on a call with Tarek Amin, who's the CEO now of Rakuten Mobile, last week, and he was saying one of the difficulties is the DU software, the RAN software, Altiostar, basically in their case, they don't want to run that in the public cloud at the moment. I mean, in terms of actually this. They're obviously doing things in their own private cloud in Japan, but in terms of this sort of push to sell some of the technologies to other companies, he says it's much better to have it in a private cloud because the integration's a challenge. And he didn't really go, it's one of those interviews where you ask a load of other things and then you look at one of the most interesting things they said and it's like, I should have queried that because, I mean, are Dish using Altiostar at all? They did turn up at the start, didn't they? And then
technically they are.
Now,
you don't hear much. You don't hear them say much about Altiostar anymore. Right. So I think the vendors that they've announced are one thing. The vendors that they're actually using now, I think, may be a different thing, and we're still figuring that out because they haven't quite launched and they haven't quite answered a lot of those questions yet.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I mean, Dish. They just hired their networking team basically 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And right now they're just getting ready to launch their first markets commercially. And so they have publicly said that we didn't plan to be a systems integrator, and yet here we are 6 months later having delayed, a delay of 6 months from when they launched.
Yeah.
Or when they were supposed to launch. They've definitely run into like serious obstacles, and they said specifically it was about integrating different vendors and different systems, which is the whole thing about Open RAN, right?
Yeah,
like you're just supposed to be able to plug it all together and it works, but
maybe
I think in practice that's not.
It's tough, and maybe in 3 or 4 years' time we'll be looking back and going, oh, eventually they got it all to work. It's like everybody's very critical about, not everybody, but a lot of people are quite negative about Rakuten because they've only managed to attract, I think, 5.8 million customers, and they're massive losses because if you only have that many subscribers and you're building out this network and they're still roaming on other networks to some extent because it's not completely nationwide. I think they just want patience. They want patience from people who are observing it. It's like when I've spoken to Tarek, he's always like, just wait to see what happens. And one interesting thing they've done now is started selling the mobile services and packaging them more with the other stuff that Rakuten does. In the same way that Amazon can sell you movies and you can also get free deliveries at the same time under their sort of Prime subscription, they can they can provide points to a mobile customer that allow you to go off and use e-commerce more cheaply, and which is obviously something that a lot of operators can't do. They don't have that, and if that works out for them, then we could start to see those numbers go up at last. But Jeff was also saying they didn't want to oversell it at first. Like the marketing's been quite low key because Tarek was so obsessed with making sure that things work, and that there aren't sort of teething troubles, and that people aren't going to say this doesn't meet expectations. Apparently, if that happens in Japan, everybody goes on Twitter. They write it. They publish.
Oh, really?
They put tweets up saying Rakuten's network's rubbish, and then you end up losing loads of subscribers. He said you've got to be really careful about how you kind of tackle it. But,
yeah, exciting. I'm excited about Dish. I think it's going to be an interesting story to watch. And I mean, Dish is kind of in the same situation where, their first price, they did announce their first commercial pricing plan for their network, and it's $30 a month.
Okay.
Which is cheaper than a lot of other plans, but it's also not exciting, and they didn't really even announce it. They just sort of let it be known, and they didn't put out a press release or anything about it. And so they're to say that they're slowly walking into the market is an understatement. They're like hiding under the bushes to get into the market. Presumably that eventually they'll have some sort of bigger marketing push, like Rakuten is planning in Japan, and that they're trying to set expectations low, but. Yeah, they're not making the big kind of hoopla like a Verizon would with one of their launches.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kelsey, you're gonna tell us about the Women in Comms stuff.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we had a
because
Women in Comms workshop yesterday, and that was really well attended. And we had speakers from Verizon and Rogers and Ericsson, and yeah, we did have a few men there, which was nice to see because we need male allies to move the needle. And yeah, overall it was a really good discussion and good audience participation. So.
Do you think there are more women this year than, in recent? I mean, people keep talking about trying to get more women into the industry.
I would say
getting girls to do STEM subjects and all this. But,
the turnout there was pretty similar to previous years, but I would say we had more men in the audience, which was interesting to see. And we got a lot of good advice from the service provider speakers. Debka with Verizon was talking about the importance of women negotiating for more parity in pay at work, and also just kind of owning your own narrative and your career path. We also talked a lot about mentors, sponsors, and coaches and what the differences are there and how you pursue those to help you along in your career, and the tricky topic of self-promotion and kind of celebrating your own successes, because you have to make those more visible in your organization to climb up that ladder. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Have you done that? Did you do some self-promotion this week too?
I probably should do some.
I feel like you probably, yeah, really.
Make some notes.
Yeah, do some, tweets or something.
Yeah, something. Yeah. So, yeah, overall a lot going on here. Really good turnout this week. It is so hot, so it is nice to be inside. But thanks for joining me, guys.
Yeah,
thanks.
Appreciate it.